At the Royal Ballroom Debutante Hall, a stunning woman named Lady Diollus enters the room. All eyes are on her as she walks in, looking completely transformed from the person everyone once knew. She is Rubetria Diollus, previously regarded as unattractive. As she gracefully descends the stairs, she's pleased to see the shock on people's faces, now that they finally notice her. The reactions are priceless. Lillia Diollus and her group, Ricky Diollus the notorious flirt, and even Princess Lisbeth are all frozen in disbelief. Time seems to stand still. Rubetria savors the moment, enjoying the feeling of being the center of attention. Lillia and her friends can hardly believe that the woman approaching them is truly Rubetria. Lady Pelkin, one of Lillia's associates, asks if it's really her, and Rubetria confirms it. She then reminds Lady Pelkin of their last meeting 2 years ago when she had been cruel to her. Rubetria reflects on how, back then, Lady Pelkin used her friendship with Lillia to act superior and dared to insult her, a duke's daughter. The timid Rubetria couldn't respond then, but now, everything has changed. Now that Juliet resides within Rubetria, everything will change. Juliet had always lived a life of luxury, admired and envied by all. No one ever dared to look down on her. Proud and arrogant, she viewed kindness as a luxury she could afford to bestow on lesser people. With that same haughty smile, Rubetria turns to Lady Pelkin and tells her that what matters is not what was said in the past, but the present. She even suggests they have tea together next time they meet. After their brief exchange, Rubetria continues walking around the hall until Lillia approaches, asking about her dress. Rubetria explains that, since her debutante ball was delayed, Madame Becky personally crafted and sent her the gown. Rubetria's gown is a custom creation from the renowned tailor of the capital, Madame Becky, a masterpiece crafted by a woman who designs according to her own principles. Even the princess of the empire has to wait an entire year for the privilege of wearing such a dress. Rubetria is well aware of how much Lillia has longed for one of Madame Becky's pieces, having begged for it countless times, only to be rejected. Now, seeing her sister in it, Lillia must be seething with envy. Trying to maintain her composure, Lillia comments on Rubetria's new appearance, saying she looks much thinner. But Rubetria quickly corrects her, saying it's not that she's thinner, she's just healthier. As their conversation continues, Lillia brings up the matter of Rubetria's partner, teasing her by saying, "Surely you didn't come alone to your once-in-a-lifetime debutante." Just then, a young man approaches Lillia. This is Cedric Reiser, a young duke, whom the original Rubetria had a long-standing crush on since childhood. Lillia, still fishing for information, presses Rubetria about her partner. But Rubetria calmly reassures her that she didn't attend the ball alone. Due to her partner's high status, they had to follow certain protocols and arrive separately. While Lillia is still puzzling over the situation, an announcement rings through the hall, declaring the entrance of Prince Lark van Lashman Deckard. Yes, the crown prince of the country, and the most powerful figure in the Deckard Empire, is Rubetria's partner. Lillia freezes in shock as she watches the prince being greeted and hailed by everyone around him. However, he quickly dismisses them and makes his way directly to Rubetria. As he approaches, Rubetria thinks to herself that only a man of his status could truly be worthy of her. His gaze is warm and admiring, as if he's completely smitten with her, but is he truly her partner or just here for a business arrangement? He gently takes her hand, kisses it, and apologizes for having her enter alone, despite being partners. At that moment, the room is filled with envious glances. Lillia, who had tormented her for so long, watches with jealousy. The noble ladies who once mocked her, swayed by Lillia's influence, now look on with envy. Even Cedric Reiser, who had played with her affections, has an expression of disbelief. It's clear that Rubetria is now the center of attention, the star of the evening, and the newfound celebrity of the Deckard Empire. The feeling of triumph is overwhelming. On the other hand, there's the trending star, Juliet Karenina, a global sensation born to a Korean mother and an English father. Known as the epitome of global beauty, she captivated the world with her charm. All eyes were on her. Admiration, jealousy, love, and envy poured in from every corner of the globe. Juliet seemed to have it all, and nothing ever seemed to go wrong in her life, until yesterday. A few years ago, Juliet shocked everyone by announcing her retirement and moving to Korea, her mother's homeland. She reinvented herself as a daily ex-tuber, ready to embrace the second chapter of her life. But just as her new journey was about to take off, she stumbled upon a comment from someone named Pig Rubetria. The comment was filled with words that made her question whether this person was a fan or not, as they seemed to be deeply troubled. One day, Juliet received a disturbing, life-threatening comment from the same person, Pig Rubetria. Uneasy, she asked her manager to look into the person behind the name, as something didn't feel right. After that, she went to bed with a heavy heart. That was all she did, only to wake up the next day in a completely different body and place. As it turns out, Rubetria had fallen into a pond and only regained consciousness hours later, with Juliet's soul inside her. Confused and disoriented, Juliet, now in Rubetria's body, asks a nearby maid to explain where they are and who she is. To her shock, the maid replies that they are in the Deckard Empire. The maid goes on to explain that the Deckard Empire has 4 major ducal families, and Rubetria is the only daughter of one of them, the Diollus family. "So, I'm Rubetria," the chubby girl mutters with a smirk. Internally, Juliet thinks that being the only daughter of a ducal family might not be so bad after all. As Juliet tries to wrap her head around the situation, Lillia and Ricky burst into the room, shouting about how Rubetria caused a self-harm scare. Ricky even sneers, saying she's lucky to have woken up because if it were him, he'd rather lose his life than live as a fat slob. Hearing their cruel words, Juliet, now in Rubetria's body, quickly realizes how badly Rubetria had been bullied her entire life. But one thing is certain, Juliet Karenina has never tolerated mistreatment, and she's not about to start now, no matter who these people think they are. In an effort to jog her memory, the maid gently asks Juliet, in Rubetria's body, if she remembers Lillia and Ricky. She even explains that, despite being her aunt and uncle, they were raised together like siblings. As Juliet wonders whether they ever really treated her like family, Ricky starts rifling through her things. He picks up a piece of cupcake and mockingly asks if she had been eating it before she jumped into the pond. They continue taunting her, but Juliet, who's dealt with envy, jealousy, and mockery throughout her celebrity life, remains unfazed. However, it dawns on her that the original Rubetria couldn't handle this constant cruelty, and Juliet begins to wonder if these people really bullied someone they grew up with to the point where she felt taking her own life was her only escape. Ricky approaches, mocking the folds of her body, and just as he reaches out to touch her neck, Juliet swiftly slaps his hand away. The room falls silent. But that's not all, she steps closer and slaps him across the cheek, leaving both Lillia and the maid stunned. With a firm voice, Juliet warns Ricky not to touch her again or she'll report him for harassment. Tears welling up in his eyes, Ricky threatens that his mother won't stand by when she hears about this. Unbothered, Rubetria, now with Juliet's soul, urges him to go tell his mother, repeating her warning with icy resolve. A few moments later, Rubetria requests to be left alone, saying that this bizarre dream is too messed up and she needs to wake up from it. Once she's alone, she lets out a deep sigh and collapses onto the bed, convincing herself that when she wakes up, everything will be back to normal. But later, when she wakes again and moves toward the window, her frustration grows. This isn't a dream after all. As she stands lost in thought, something small and dark, like a stone, falls to the floor. Slowly, it begins to take the shape of a man. Startled, Rubetria grabs a stool and tries to chase him away, but the figure calmly calls out, "Juliet Karenina," and tells her not to be afraid. Seeing her fear, the strange figure shifts into a familiar face. Not impressed, Rubetria says she prefers someone more mature with a fit body. To her shock, the figure immediately transforms into the face of Lark van Lashman Deckard, the crown prince and famously the most handsome man in the empire. Intrigued, Rubetria lowers the stool and asks who he is, especially since he called her by her real name, Juliet Karenina. He introduces himself as Wishit, Rubetria's spirit servant. Juliet, still in shock, immediately asks if this is some kind of magic and orders him to return her to her original body. However, Wishit informs her that it's not possible. Juliet Karenina no longer exists in her original form. He goes on to explain that Rubetria, as a member of the Diollus Duchy, comes from a line with the power to control spirits, each with their own unique abilities. Wishit, in particular, is the spirit of wishes. Juliet begins to piece things together and wonders aloud if the original Rubetria had wished to swap bodies with her. Wishit confirms her suspicion. Seeing the anger and confusion in her eyes, Wishit attempts to soothe her, but Juliet is far from calm. How could she be? She's been thrown into the body of some random girl, and the very first thing that happens is getting mocked by a pair of spoiled brats. Wishit, sensing Juliet's frustration, tries to explain. He tells her that, as Rubetria's spirit servant, he was bound to obey her wishes. Still, Juliet isn't convinced. Wishit goes on to reveal that Rubetria's greatest desire was to live the life of a perfect human in one of the many worlds that exist. Unable to comprehend why Rubetria would choose her life specifically, Juliet erupts in anger, yelling that Rubetria could have just wished to be slim, beautiful, or even to get back at the people who bullied her. Wishit responds that Rubetria's story is far more complex than it seems, as she had lived a life of oppression for 45 long years. Just before succumbing to a terminal illness, Rubetria made her first wish, to live her life over again. Shocked, Juliet asks if Rubetria had used a wish to turn back time to this moment. Wishit confirms, explaining that they are now in the period when Rubetria was just 15 years old, the time when she first met him. But her body is still the same, Juliet remarks. Didn't she wish to lose weight? Wishit then explains that Rubetria had 3 wishes, but she decided to lose the weight on her own, without using a wish. With a snap of his fingers, a diary detailing Rubetria's weight loss journey appears in Juliet's hands. As she flips through the pages, the emotional weight of Rubetria's struggles hits her, and she bursts into tears. Angrily, Juliet shouts that Wishit is expecting her to feel sympathy for someone who did something so cruel to her. She goes on, saying that whatever life Rubetria lived has nothing to do with her and even calls her a thief. As Juliet fumes, Wishit drops a final bombshell. Rubetria used her last wish to swap bodies with Juliet because her original body had only 10 minutes left to live. Stunned, Juliet pauses as Wishit reminds her of her last memory as Juliet Karenina, being stabbed by a crazed fan. Wishit tells Juliet there's something important he needs to show her, something that explains why Rubetria chose to swap bodies with her, even knowing she was about to lose her life. He then reveals a hidden truth. Whenever Rubetria was distressed, she would gaze into the pond, which allowed her to watch Juliet's life unfold. On that fateful day, as she was being tormented by the twins and Cedric, Rubetria once again turned to the pond for solace. But what she saw wasn't the glamorous life she admired, she saw Juliet's life slipping away. In that moment of desperation, Rubetria made her final wish. She pleaded with Wishit to use her last wish to save Juliet, but Wishit told her it was impossible. Juliet's fate in her world was already sealed, and even he couldn't alter it. Despite this, Rubetria refused to give up. Tears streamed down her face as she tried everything to find a way to save Juliet, but Wishit's powers couldn't intervene in the natural order of another world's fate. With her options running out and her heart breaking, Rubetria made one final plea. She asked Wishit to swap her soul with Juliet's before her breath completely stopped. If she couldn't save Juliet's life, she was willing to give her own in exchange, choosing to pass away in Juliet's place rather than see her perish. After hearing Wishit's explanation, Juliet feels remorseful for yelling at him earlier and apologizes. She then asks for a moment to cry, letting out all the emotions that had built up. Once she's done, Wishit gently encourages her to make a wish. Though Juliet is skeptical, knowing Rubetria had already used her 3 wishes, Wishit clarifies that because the soul inside Rubetria's body has changed, Juliet is now entitled to her own 3 wishes. It's a small loophole due to the binding of the spirit to the body, not the person. Determined, Juliet decides to make a wish. Though Wishit suggests she use it to become slim immediately, she dismisses the idea. Why waste a wish on something she could achieve through diet and exercise? After all, as an actress, she's been managing her body all her life. Instead, to Wishit's surprise, Juliet wishes to gain all of Rubetria's knowledge, memories, emotions, every moment Rubetria saw, heard, and felt. Wishit tries to caution her, explaining that this would mean fully absorbing Rubetria's life as her own. But Juliet, resolute, tells him she can handle it. After all, she's already living in Rubetria's body, and Rubetria sacrificed her life for her. After a moment of contemplation, Wishit agrees, but warns that he won't let all the memories come flooding in at once, as that could overwhelm her. Instead, it will unfold gradually, like a deep, immersive dream. Juliet closes her eyes, and soon, Rubetria's memories begin to play out in her mind. When she opens her eyes again, she feels a newfound clarity and understanding. Inwardly, she acknowledges that Rubetria's choices have given her a second chance at life. Rubetria Diollus, the youngest daughter of the prestigious Diollus family, was born with every advantage, lineage, wealth, and even a rare spiritual blessing. The Diollus family, blessed by spirits, grants its members the ability to form contracts with spirits upon reaching the age of 15. Her father, the head of the family, holds power nearly equal to that of the imperial family. Her eldest brother, a genius, has been acting as the family head's proxy since he was just 14. Meanwhile, her second brother, with unmatched martial prowess, became the deputy leader of the Imperial Knights. With such an extraordinary background, one would assume Rubetria led a happy, fulfilled life. However, Rubetria's reality was far from that. Despite her privileges, she was tormented throughout her life by her cruel step-grandmother, Volga, and her 2 children. This emotional abuse, combined with the physical toll of her extreme obesity, led to her tragic fate, passing away at the age of 45 from complications related to her weight. Desperate for another chance, she made her first wish to Wishit, to turn back time and live her life anew. Even with her return to the past, Rubetria struggled to break free from the chains of her abusive upbringing. Volga's harsh treatment crippled her emotionally and stifled her potential, preventing her from realizing her true abilities. Despite having knowledge and skills far superior to others, Rubetria could never flourish, her wings clipped by her step-grandmother's cruelty. Juliet, reflecting on everything she learned, asks Wishit if it's possible to wish for someone to be eliminated. He confirms that it is, explaining that he can grant any wish except for bringing back the deceased. Juliet, curious, wonders why Rubetria didn't use her wishes to remove her bullies. Wishit suggests that Rubetria was simply too kind-hearted. Juliet thinks to herself that Rubetria still had 2 wishes left and could have easily used one to get rid of her cruel step-grandmother. But just as she's lost in thought, a sharp pain strikes her head, and more of Rubetria's memories flood in. With newfound clarity, Juliet understands why Rubetria didn't use all of her wishes. Juliet then asks Wishit if he'll disappear once she uses all 3 of her wishes. He confirms this, and in an attempt to comfort him, she apologizes for causing him to lose such a precious friend. But Wishit quickly interjects, saying it wasn't her fault. He explains that Rubetria had chosen to peer into Juliet's life, and he merely granted her wish. Juliet isn't to blame. Still, Juliet continues trying to console him, explaining that Rubetria didn't contemplate self-destruction because she didn't care about him. Rather, she was simply overwhelmed and found life unbearable. Even after turning back time, Rubetria feared that nothing would change, that she would be forced to endure the same torment. That's why she made the decisions she did. Juliet also points out that Wishit might have misunderstood Rubetria's desires. She clarifies that Rubetria didn't wish to be slim and beautiful for vanity's sake, she just wanted to be happy. As Juliet rummages through the room, she reflects aloud that Rubetria's longing for a beautiful and slim life was likely a consequence of her mistreatment. Rubetria believed her unhappiness was tied to her looks, but if she hadn't been abused, she might never have been so concerned with her appearance. Perplexed by Juliet's actions, Wishit asks what she's searching for. She replies casually that she's looking for hidden snacks because she plans to live off them. Confused, Wishit points out the contradiction. She had just mentioned that Rubetria wanted a happy life, and losing weight doesn't necessarily equate to happiness. Juliet, with a calm but firm tone, clarifies her intent. She's not doing this for superficial reasons or denying Rubetria's appearance. While appearance alone doesn't determine happiness, Juliet recognizes that obesity comes with serious health risks. She isn't just aiming to be slim for the sake of beauty, her goal is to improve Rubetria's overall life. Obesity is the root of all diseases, she reminds him, adding that if she's going to rewrite Rubetria's fate, she'll start by avoiding the tragic end at 45 due to obesity-related complications. Juliet Karenina, now fully embracing her new identity as Rubetria Diollus, resolves to start over with a fresh mindset and a new body. She promises herself that from this moment on, she will live as Rubetria and repay the debt she owes to her. She knows she can't waste any time if she wants to turn her new life around, even considering starting with custom clothing to fit her new goals. Fortunately, Rubetria is well educated, and Juliet vows to make the most of the knowledge Rubetria accumulated through years of study. Her first major goal is to disrupt the household hierarchy that is tightly controlled by Volga Diollus. Most of the servants are loyal to Volga, who has ruled the house from the shadows for years. Even Rubetria's two brothers, who were raised under Volga's influence, remain oblivious to her true nature. The only person who could potentially help Rubetria is her father, but he is a broken man who has long since withdrawn from the world. As Rubetria steps out of her room, her maid, Rebecca, rushes toward her, concerned. "Why didn't you send for me? You even needed to change your clothes," Rebecca exclaims, breathless. Despite the chaos, Rubetria smiles inwardly, thinking, "At least there's someone who cares for me." Rebecca informs her that she had asked the chef to prepare all of Rubetria's favorite dishes. As she continues speaking, Rubetria reflects that Rebecca was the only servant who truly cared for her, even when the others turned a blind eye to Volga's abuse. However, Rebecca couldn't ignore the incident on Rubetria's 16th birthday, the one that ended her life. Snapping back to reality, Rubetria notices the maid calling her name, worried about her silence. Rebecca presents her with several extra dishes, offering her more than just the usual meal. Rubetria, with newfound determination, gently declines, insisting on having just a proper meal. Then, seeing the spread of food before her, she surprises the maid by asking her to join her for the meal. She's visibly stunned by the invitation. Rubetria then informs Rebecca of her new plans, starting a fasting regimen the next day, combined with daily workouts. She instructs the maid on the kinds of meals to prepare after her exercise routine. After laying out her dietary plans, she also requests an appointment with the tailor to order new clothes, emphasizing her intention to make changes. Finally, she repeats her invitation, urging Rebecca to sit down and eat with her. On the third floor of the mansion lies a cold, eerie room at the farthest end, a place where the chill lingers through the hallway, with a massive door that seems like it may never open. This is the room of the Duke of Diollus, Rubetria's father. One day, Rubetria approaches her father's door, her steps slow and deliberate. As expected, there's a guard stationed outside. The old head butler, a man who has served the family for years and managed the household alongside her father, stops her. "Why are you here, Lady Rubetria?" he asks, his tone formal but firm. "I've come to see my father," she replies, her voice steady. The butler hesitates before informing her that the lady of the house, Volga, is not present, so she may return later when Volga has come back. Until now, Rubetria had never been allowed to visit her father without Volga's explicit permission. It was an unspoken rule: Rubetria Diollus, the secretly abused daughter, would never approach the Duke. But with Volga absent, this was a rare opportunity. So, she steps closer to the door, her resolve unwavering. "Open it," she orders, her gaze locking onto the butler's. The butler remains hesitant. With Volga's trust, he had been able to silence the other servants and ensure Rubetria remained isolated, unable to meet her brothers or her father. After a while, he mentions that he had heard that she became mentally unstable after causing a commotion involving self-harm. He also says that when the lady of the house comes back, she will re-educate her on proper manners, but until then, she should stay quietly in her room and reflect on her actions. It's obvious that he's trying to belittle her with his choice of words. So she kicks the door and tells the butler that she would personally tell her father that the old butler is hard of hearing and it's tough for him to continue working in the Duke's household. Before the butler could say anything, the Duke comes out to find out what is going on. Rubetria quickly says she has something to tell him. The butler tries to stop her from speaking to her father, but she stands her ground and insists that she needs to speak to him directly. The butler's attempts to stop the father-daughter moment are ignored as the Duke ushers his daughter into the room. As she steps into the room, she can't help but notice the dim lighting until he lit a candle and asked what she was talking about. She sees the alcohol and cigarettes scattered around, but she holds back her comments, understanding the reasons behind his behavior. In her previous life, her father had passed away at 39 due to sorrow over his deceased wife, indulging in alcohol and cigarettes. She feels that he needs to take care of his health by quitting smoking. After a moment of reflection, she firmly asks him how long he plans to continue living like this. The Duke is taken aback, but she sternly advises him to pull himself together and start living a healthy life. She stands before her father, raising her voice and demanding he clear away the empty alcohol bottles. Then she asks if he's eaten anything, but instead of answering, he questions if this is why she came. Not exactly, she replies, arms crossed. But can't a daughter ask her father that? When he admits he hasn't eaten, she anxiously asks if he drank 6 bottles on an empty stomach. He brushes it off with excuses, but she insists he drinks less because it will take a toll on him eventually. Firmly, she instructs him to call a doctor and promises to return the next day to ensure he's followed through. Before addressing the main reason for her visit, she shares how the butler recently blocked her from seeing him. She wonders aloud if her father ordered the butler to do this, but he denies it. Undeterred, she reports other foolish behavior from the butler, including calling her troublesome. Silently, she reflects on her skill at emotional acting, a talent she mastered as Juliet, convincing everyone effortlessly. Her father sighs, dismissing the butler as senile and ready for replacement. Rubetria calmly reminds him that managing the servants falls under Volga's authority, not her brother Diego's. She even points out that Grandma Volga trusts the butler and has no plans to dismiss him, leaving her father puzzled about why Volga handles Diego's responsibilities instead. Returning to the main reason for her visit, she asks her father to lend her 300 million bark. Startled, he questions if she's simply asking for pocket money, but she clarifies that it's a loan and intends to repay it. A credit certificate in his name would allow her to withdraw the funds from the bank. Her father suggests asking her brother instead, pointing out that their finances can easily cover her expenses. However, she explains that doing so would require her to justify the purpose to her brother, with whom she's not particularly close. Moreover, borrowing from him would surely invite commentary from Grandma Volga. She pleads again, promising to repay the bank's principal and interest. After a thoughtful pause, her father stands, signs a document, and hands it to her. The paper, bearing the Duke of Diorlus's signature, is as valuable as a blank check. She accepts it gratefully and expresses her thanks. Her father suggests that if she's uncomfortable using her own name for the loan, she can simply use his and forget about repayment. But she firmly insists on paying it back, stating that she's grown up and needs to be independent. Amused, he chuckles at the idea of a 15-year-old declaring themselves an adult. Still wanting to support her, he gently places a hand on her shoulder and reminds her that it's okay to rely on her parents' money because she still needs their care. Thoughts swirl, but she quickly suppresses them, turning toward the door. Just before stepping out, she pauses and asks calmly if he knew she almost drowned in the garden pond recently. His stunned expression makes it clear, he had no idea. Rubetria reveals that she once resented her father for his indifference, but now she's trying to understand because she's his daughter. She explains that while she has no memories of her mother, he does, and perhaps that pain has left him unable to care for a daughter who needed his attention. Still, she issues a warning: just as he has ignored her until now, he should continue living without concern for whether she lives or dies. She promises not to trouble him again and declares she will take care of herself from now on. As she walks through the hallway, Juliet's thoughts take control. Rubetria may have wished to shield her father from pain, but Juliet harbors no such sentiment. Anger simmers within her, fueled by resentment. She vows that everyone who made Rubetria suffer will know the weight of her pain. Regret, repentance, and punishment await those who deserve it. For Rubetria's sake, Juliet promises to fight with all her might. Alone in his room, the Duke calls upon a spirit to reveal the dream that haunts him. As it unfolds, he sees a smiling face, a graceful figure, and hears a joyful voice, the cherished image of his late wife. Meanwhile, on her way back, Rubetria walks silently as Wishart asks why she didn't tell the Duke about Volga, but she does not answer. Suddenly, she stops and stares at him, leaving the maids puzzled since they can only see her. Wishart remains invisible. Rubetria quietly pleads with him not to speak to her in public, fearing she might respond without thinking. If anyone discovers she made a contract with a wish-granting spirit, execution is certain. Rubetria Diollus is famously the only member of the Duke's family without a spirit contract, and it must stay that way. Wishart is classified as a dangerous spirit. By law, anyone who forms a contract with such a being faces execution. In response to Wishart's question about keeping quiet about Volga, Rubet explains that Volga holds the true power in the household and is seen as an angelic figure. After Rubet's mother passed, Volga took over raising the 3 children. While she showed little care for Rubet, she was deeply devoted to the 2 older brothers. Diego supports Volga, and with all the servants loyal to her, how could Rubet tell her father that Volga torments her? He would dismiss it as childish complaining, not take it seriously. Now understanding her reason, Wishart asks why she borrowed money from the Duke and what her plan is. Rubet explains she needs the funds to start a business and become independent from this oppressive household, keeping her promise to live a happy life for herself. Her venture, Blanc de Ruby, is a new clothing brand that will finally put her skills to use. Although she borrowed from her father, she already has the necessary funds and is an experienced designer. She plans to meet with a tailor in the evening to discuss the project, but one problem remains: finding a male model. While she has someone in mind for the female role, the male model is undecided. Could the Crown Prince be the one? She's confident she can convince him, but the challenge is getting a meeting. Wishart suggests going through her second brother, who practically lives by the prince's side as a member of the Imperial Knights. At the training grounds, the Crown Prince and Rubet's second brother, Victor Diollus, face off with drawn swords. Their skill draws the attention of ladies who pretend to be just passing by to watch the match. After a brief duel, the Crown Prince emerges victorious with a record of 26 wins, 2 draws, and 25 losses. Taking a break together, the prince uses the moment to remind Victor of their wager. Victor assures him he hasn't forgotten and asks what he wants. The prince explains that lately, noble meetings have become awkward because everyone keeps asking when he will marry. Victor laughs and teasingly suggests he solves the problem by actually getting married. The prince dismisses the idea, saying he can't choose just anyone. After a pause, he decides to drop the topic, clearly growing uncomfortable with the conversation. The Crown Prince, Lark van Lashman-Deckard, is considered the most perfect among all the heirs in history. He established imperial studies at the age of around 10 and he excelled in politics, economics, and diplomacy. He succeeded in negotiating friendly relations with the Kingdom of Loven and the center of maritime trade at the mere age of 13. Thanks to his contract with a renowned land spirit, the ground he stood on always transformed into a favorable structure for war. And so, His Highness Lark spent his life striving to meet the world's expectations for the Empire's sake, up to and including his grave. Alongside the veil of perfect seclusion. Victor is stunned when the prince asks him to introduce his 3 younger sisters. Curious, He wonders why the prince needs his help and suggests that if it's about Lillia, the prince can easily meet her since she attends noble parties daily. The prince quickly corrects him, reminding him that Lillia is his aunt, and clarifies that he's talking about his younger sister, Rubetria. Meanwhile, Rubet continues planning her business project with Wishit. Their current goal is to cast the crown prince as a model, with Rubet as team leader and Wishit as a team member. When Wishit mentions a potential challenge, Rubet brushes it aside confidently, assuring him not to worry, she has some personal insight into the prince that might help. Rubet continues scheming and suddenly forms a bold plan. She'll save the prince's life by using her knowledge of future events. She can suggest this idea confidently because she knows what's to come. In Rubetria's memories, the ambitious second prince, Nathan, assassinates the crown prince, leading to the death of Crown Prince Lark Deckard. But for the sake of the kingdom and herself, Lark must survive. Nathan's rise would bring tyranny and ruin to the country, and Rubet refuses to miss the chance for a wise and handsome ruler on the throne. The Deckard Empire is blessed by the spirits and guided by two chosen bloodlines, the royal Deckard family and the Diollus family, to which Rubetria belongs. Spirit mages are born exclusively from these families, marked by their golden eyes, a symbol of their rare power. On their 15th birthday, each spirit mage forms an unbreakable contract with a spirit. This tradition has no exceptions, except for one, Rubetria, who never bonded with a spirit despite her golden eyes. Throughout history, spirit mages have wielded immense power, and both families strive to ensure their legacy by producing as many spirit mages as possible to maintain their dominance. The Deckard Empire ensured the continuation of spirit mages by having many children. To achieve this, the emperor was required to take multiple wives, leading to dozens of imperial offspring. This practice turned the royal household into a chaotic battleground. With many children but only one emperor's throne, fierce rivalries emerged, with some willing to assassinate their siblings to claim power. Among these ruthless contenders was the second prince, Nathan van Lishmer Deckard, whose ambition knew no bounds. While Rubetria is still crafting a plan to save the prince, the tailor, Becky, arrives, prompting Wishit to slip away unnoticed. Becky greets Rubet with curiosity, noting it hasn't been long since she last made a dress for her. Rubet gestures for Becky to sit and clarifies that the visit isn't about a new dress. Time seems to pass swiftly, and Juliet has now fully merged with Rubet. There was no need for further adjustment. She embodies all 45 years of Rubet's memories and senses and is now entirely Rubet in mind and spirit. However, some things have definitely changed. First, Rubet has stuck to her exercise routine for 4 days straight. Second, she's broken free from staying cooped up in her room all day. Lastly, she now eats 2 meals daily. For the past 4 days, she's had breakfast and lunch with her father, an effort to pull him out of his dependency on alcohol and cigarettes. During one of these meals, an announcement shakes her: Grandma Volga is returning. Panic floods through her as memories of Volga's harsh words resurface, bringing tears to her eyes. Despite trying to push them away, the painful memories keep replaying in her mind. Suddenly, Rubet clings to her father, sobbing and pleading for his acceptance. Startled but moved, he wraps her in a warm embrace, leaving the maids gasping in shock. Without hesitation, he lifts her in his arms and heads out. As they make their way through the empire, Volga's voice rings out sharply, demanding to know what's happening and why Rubet is in such a state. Calm but resolute, he responds that she isn't feeling well and that he's taking her to the doctor. Volga protests, pointing out that Rubet barely leaves her room, but he stands firm, assuring her that he will manage it. Before she can say more, he strides out of view with Rubet, leaving Volga seething with confusion and fury, unsure of what just transpired. Later, Aaron Mueller, the Duke's personal physician, explains that Rubetria appears to be suffering from psychological trauma. He states that such conditions often stem from shocking or frightening experiences, trapping patients in the emotions of those moments. The disorder can manifest in different ways, including the resurfacing of painful memories, sometimes through dreams. Aaron adds that many patients with these symptoms have endured physical or emotional abuse in childhood. He then carefully asks the Duke if Rubetria has shown signs of being overly sensitive, sudden bursts of anger, or feelings of abandonment. The Duke immediately recalls Rubet's emotional pleas from earlier and anxiously asks the physician if there is any way to treat her condition. Aaron explains that traditional medication isn't suitable for mental issues like this. What Rubetria needs most is her own determination to heal, along with support from those around her. Still puzzled, the Duke asks for clarification. Aaron elaborates that providing gentle care, warm words, and a compassionate attitude will be essential to her recovery. He even suggests that creating a positive illusion, a comforting environment, might aid in her healing process. Now alone with Rubetria, the Duke contemplates creating an illusion that might bring her comfort. He briefly considers making her dream of her mother but quickly dismisses the idea, realizing it would only leave her feeling empty upon waking. Instead, he resolves to ask his spirit for help in giving her a pleasant dream. When the spirit asks what kind of dream he desires, the Duke softly replies, "Let her dream of being with me, sharing meals, going out together, and throwing tantrums at me as much as she wants." As the Duke leaves the room, his spirit and Wishit exchange polite words. Wishit then urges her to spend more time with Rubetria and assist her. As the Duke's spirit holds Rubet, she reveals her soul fragment is poisoned yet remains responsible, confident, and above all, kind. Meanwhile, Volga hears about Rubetria's transformation after surviving near drowning in the pond. Ricky complains that Rubet slapped him and demands his mother reprimand her. But Volga, deep in thought, reflects on Rubet's sudden boldness. She struggles to believe Rubet would speak up now and reassures herself that the Duke can't confront her without evidence, even if accused of mistreatment. After her reflection, she cautions Lillia and Ricky to be mindful of their actions. She advises them to avoid Rubet when possible, refrain from causing trouble, and maintain proper behavior around the staff. The children are stunned by her warning. Ricky protests, questioning why he should stay away despite the slap, but Volga quickly silences him for talking back. After a pause, Volga drops to her knees, pleading with the children to endure just a little longer. She reminds them their 15th birthday is only a year away and promises that once an heir to the spirit's lineage is chosen, they will have the freedom to live as they wish. She explains that the Master's Fountain holds countless spirits, each with desirable abilities, but warns them to stay vigilant and only bond with the spirit she mentioned. Concerned, Ricky asks what happens if a spirit doesn't choose them, as happened with Rubet. Volga reassures him, insisting there's no reason he won't be chosen. Even without red hair, the Diollus blood flows through him, and he will find the Wishit spirit. Meanwhile, Rubet wakes up, stunned by the dream she just had. When Wishit asks about it, she explains she dreamed of going out with her father and eating a large meal. The thought of her boldness in the dream makes her shudder, but she's relieved it wasn't real. As she reflects quietly, she recalls how, after sharing laughter and a meal with her father, they enjoyed flower viewing and watched a play. The dream felt like the peaceful reality she longed for, leaving her feeling lighter. In a calm voice, she apologizes to Wishit for showing weakness after telling him not to worry. She hadn't realized that merely hearing Volga's name would trigger such a strong reaction in her. Wishit steps forward and gently rubs her head, saying he expected this reaction ever since she absorbed Rubetria's memories. He soothes her, assuring there's no need to apologize. Embarrassed, she suddenly remembers the commotion she caused with her father in the dream and cringes at the thought. Just then, the door bursts open, startling her. At first, she thinks it's her father, but a closer look reveals it's her brother, Vigo, inviting her to go out with him. Vigo Diollus, the eldest sibling, shares a neutral relationship with her. He holds deep gratitude toward Volga, who raised them in place of their mother. Trusting her gentle demeanor without question, Vigo cherished the twins and obeyed Volga without hesitation. Rubet understands his loyalty. He believed the twins received less affection while Volga cared for all three of them. Yet it's because of Vigo's influence that Rubetria never spoke out about Volga's mistreatment. Wishit points out how unusually quiet Volga has been, noting that he expected her to rush over by now. Rubetria admits she isn't sure what Volga might be plotting, but, for now, it seems harmless. Still, the thought of facing her stirs lingering trauma. Shaking it off, Rubetria decides to proceed with the model casting project. Later, she visits her father to inform him he'll have to eat lunch alone because she's heading into the city to watch a play. To her surprise, he asks about the play and then shows her a movie pamphlet, suggesting they see it instead. Relieved that he didn't bring up the previous day, Rubetria silently thanks him for sparing her from a conversation about Volga. When he invites her again for the movie, she reluctantly agrees, realizing his company might actually help with her plan to guide him toward living a more normal life. After debating the lunch menu for a while, they finally head out together.